How many of you are brand new to our events? Okay, great. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So, how many of you were here for Michaela's session? Any of you? Okay, a few of you. Okay. All right, so we're going to go for about 2 hours, and we'll do the energy transfer about halfway there, and between here and there, we'll fill the time and explain what you're here to do, if it's your first time, and also talk a little bit about what's happening in the world and your role in that, and also Barb will share a bit of her experience and her abilities, and she's here to assist me in the energy transfer work that I do, and she's been a part of that since the beginning, and was really a catalyst for me stepping out into doing this in the first place. So she'll have an opportunity to share her version of the story as well. But this is very interactive, so if you have any questions along the way, jump right in and ask, and we'll be happy to take those. First of all, I want to just talk just quickly about our organization and some of what we have going on. And Michaela will pass around the basket later. We do collect donations to pay for our various events and other activities. So we're the Flower of Life organization, and we have several other projects that we do under the organization. One of which is our local events, which we do here, and also some events nationally. We have our Awaken Empowered Expo, which is kind of a larger version of our local events. So that's a 3-day event that we put on in downtown Detroit, and we rent out a hotel for 3 days and put the event there. So it's 3 full days of amazing lecturers and speakers, teachers from all over the world, vibrational healing experiences, things of that nature. Everything from consciousness-related things to channeling, to healing, to ancient archaeology, breakthroughs happening in all different fields around the world. So that's coming up this September 7th, 8th, and 9th at the Doubletree Hilton in downtown Detroit. And then for the first time, we've had a kids program for many years now, and it was primarily focused on kids who are very gifted, or you may consider them indigos or crystal children or whatever. Ultimately, the goal is we're trying to build or create an entirely new educational program for kids that will be available for them year-round. But we've been taking slow steps toward that. And the next step we have is a weekend retreat, a 3-day retreat, which will be August, the first weekend in August. And that'll be held here in Michigan. And we haven't yet put together the information for it yet, but that'll be coming out soon. So it'll be 3 days where we are bringing in teachers from all over the world, teaching things like telepathy and telekinesis, and Michaela is going to teach channeling there, and Barb will be doing an aura class. So quite a variety of amazing things, highly interactive, and it's going to be held in a park, so they'll have activities like hay rides and animal petting, things like that as well. So different kind of thing than we've done in the past, but this is the beginning of a new phase of our kids program that's going to continue evolving in a certain direction. So that's going on. We have the Awaken Empowered TV show where we broadcast a lot of amazing guests on the show, and so tonight there's Robert O. Williams who's on the show, and he is speaking about how we're moving toward a more heart-centered world. So that's on the show. Michaela's events and Barb did a recent workshop on auras, which is also on there. You can find archives of that on YouTube. And we have a magazine that we also have articles from our various presenters and teachers as well. A lot of other projects too, but that just gives you a little bit of an idea of what we've been up to in recent years. So this is just one aspect of what we do. Any questions about any of that? So all of this is, yeah.
I was wondering what age range the camp is sort of set for?
Well, we will make exceptions, but in general it's 9 to 17, 18. And the exceptions are, a lot of younger kids now are very bright and brilliant. So if you have somebody who's younger than that, but could be okay in that kind of environment with those other age kids, then we can evaluate that on an individual basis. But in general, that's the age range of our Conscious Youth program. Anyone else?
How much is it?
We haven't, we just brand new program. So what we're ultimately going to do, to jump ahead a bit, is we want to try to create some sort of program that is crowd funded so that the kids don't have to pay for it, or at least to make it available to people who can't afford it. But in the beginning, we have a lot of overhead to cover the cost. So it may be, I'm going to say maybe a few $100s or something per child at the beginning. But we may try to, if we can, put some sort of crowdsourced program in place as well, so other people can contribute into it and we can provide a free tuition program. And that's a goal, I think, long-term of the school anyway, is to try to provide something that isn't really restrictive financially to the kids and their parents. The first Friday, Saturday, Sunday in August. I don't remember the exact what those dates are, but yeah. And that'll be at the Kensington Park, and we rented a space there for us to do the event. And they have a petting zoo and lots of animals, and that they'll lots of other outdoor activities that we'll try to blend into the program as well. So basically, it'll be from early in the morning till about 5 p.m. at night, and then so a lot of the parents are flying in from all over to participate. So these aren't just Michigan kids who are going to be there. So we have. We haven't yet, but we'll be making arrangements with a nice hotel nearby, so the parents will be able to stay there, and we'll take the kids in the morning and return them to you in the evening, so they'll be with you the rest of the day or at night. Yeah.
When and where do your youth consciousness group meet?
Well, that has been, we've had it different ways over the years. We started out as a physical group here in Michigan. And we had a small group of kids who met here. Eventually, we started doing it as a virtual event so that we could include kids all over the world. So we did it as a webinar where kids would join from all over. And it was every other week we had a different teacher. So every 2 weeks we had like Michaela, and then I think it was 4 weeks later we had Barb, and in between we had a social. So in the social, the kids got to meet each other and share stories and experiences they had. Eventually, the local group kind of died down, and we couldn't, the problem we run into with this, and it's not going to be a problem in the future, but is not that there aren't enough awakened children here. It's that the parents are not so much. And so while we would have a full house if we left it up to the kids, we have a problem getting the parents to feel comfortable letting their kids to do, to explore these kind of things. So eventually we'll have a physical location again, and the intention is really to launch physical schools all around the world and also provide virtual education for them as well. But for the moment, we don't have a local program. We're happy to launch it if enough of you have kids that would be interested. So that's not a problem. It's just didn't really have enough interest. So that's why we're doing the retreat as an alternative, because for that, we can make it available globally, and the parents will just, all the parents are committed to bringing their kids in, but it's going to be a weekend, really, highly experiential, where we're intending to create kind of like a Harry Potter environment inside of this school space so that it feels like a very mystical thing, but we're teaching really serious, things. So a lot of the kids will go away from there having learned how to use telepathy and telekinesis and things like this. So the teachers that are teaching these programs are actually doing these things already, but they're doing it in different parts of the world. We're going to bring them all together. So that's the first phase of that. We'll do that every year at least once going forward.
I have a soon-to-be 5-year-old, and can I come and observe?
It's not for parents, no. We've always had that policy with even our evening program. Now, if you're 5-year-old, if you think that he, she, no, not ready? Okay.
Not in that way.
Yeah. We've always not let parents be part of it because the kids don't feel very comfortable when there are a lot of adults running around, and so we don't really allow parents to be in the room when it's happening, with the exception of the teachers who are teaching it. Even I make myself scarce, because I don't want to intimidate anybody. So we've typically, sometimes we have parents waiting in the other room somewhere, but when we've had that as an option in this venue, that won't be possible. So basically, if you do bring your child, you'll be leaving them with us for the day and then picking them up later.
And what was the age range?
Technically 9 to 18, but we'll flex on that if you feel your child would be comfortable with those age ranges and would be comfortable with us for the day. So that's coming up first weekend in August. And we can always use volunteers for all of our events. If you're interested in volunteering at our expo, that opportunity will come up a couple of months before the expo itself, which is in September. And the kids program, we don't need as many volunteers, but we will need a few. And we have a year-round planning team that meets, that actually pulls all this stuff together. And our organization is self-financed, so we finance it through our donations that we collect at our events like this, or I myself finance a lot of it, and some ticket sales, which help cover some things too. So anything you can do, and our volunteers basically volunteer their time to plan the events and run the events and all of that as well. So we have a lot of things going on. Any level you want to get involved or help us, and let us know, or either speak with Michaela or me, and we can get you started. Anyone else? Okay, so in about a half an hour, we'll do the energy transfer. Are any of you totally unfamiliar with the energy transfer? Okay, you don't even know why you're here. You just showed up. Okay. So we've been doing this, the energy transfer event, for, 4 years or something, like 4 or 5 years here, on purpose anyway. And now there are plenty of YouTube videos out there of our actual events that we've done here, where we do the energy transfer. This is a multi-dimensional energy transmission. It's a two-way process where you'll be able to not only receive energy that will raise your consciousness and your vibration, expand your energy field, and also help to open up things that you brought here as your that are inherent to who you are, that may have been shut down or gone dormant because of the society you grew up in and the vibrational environment of the planet in the past. But also, you'll be able to send your karmic density, which is, I would describe that as a dense energy that's weighing down your energy field. And that can manifest as tangibly as maybe unhappiness or depression or a lot of obstacles in your life. Two people with a lot of karmic density or not very much, the difference is the one without very much, they can go through the same life experiences and it doesn't really bother them so much, the ups and downs. They're more calm, relaxed, at peace inside about their life experience. The karmic density can cause a lot of suffering in life, a lot of difficulties. Doesn't mean that if you came here to experience something difficult that you won't still experience it. That may still happen, but you won't experience it in a difficult way. You will have the option to choose whether or not to go through it with difficulty and suffering or more ease. So that's some of the effects of the energy transfer. Now, the videos, if you watch any of the YouTube videos, people are using the videos from these events all over the world to facilitate this process on their own, in the comfort of their own home. So you can do that if you'd like. The energy used here is at a certain level that anybody can use, that's in the videos as well. So the energy that I use in private sessions or my advanced program is a little bit more intense, and it's for people who are more serious about moving a little bit more accelerated in the process. But the videos from this event and this event here are at a level that most people can find comfortable and not too much of an adjustment in their energy field that would cause challenges. So that's what we're going to do in a little while here. And one of the manifestations of this is that your energy field will expand. And we know that because early on, when I started doing these events many years ago here in Michigan, Barb came into my life, and my meeting her was the catalyst for me doing this. And so she's here because she's very talented in being able to see energy fields, and she can see what your energy looks like before an energy transfer and after. And so from years of doing this, we've been able to see that it's very consistent and reliable as a measure of the change, one of the changes and effects that this will have on your energy field in your physical body. Also, she can see the transfer of energy back and forth from me to all of you. So when you're sending the density to me, she can actually see that as a very dark energy that comes to my energy field and disintegrates as it touches my energy field. So she's able to physically see what's taking place in the space. And me being a very rational, left-brain, intellectual guy from my past, I needed that validation to actually decide to do this. So she's here to be our eyes and ears, to show us what's actually happening. For those of you who may not have that perception already, it's not one of my superpowers. So she's here to help in that way. So I'll let Barb share a little about her journey, and maybe in about 10 minutes or so we can explain how the energy transfer process works. And then afterward we can talk a little bit about what's actually happening in the world. I know a lot of people, especially people like you who are more conscious, can get a little discouraged by the state of affairs in the world, and that we may not be heading in the right direction. I can assure you that we are. And even events like this, or people like, that you see, people like you even, I mean, this kind of an event wouldn't have even been possible 10, 20 years ago. So, and I'm seeing so many amazing, gifted adults and children all over the world these days. So there's so much happening on that level, not to mention even in the three-dimensional physical level, incredible breakthroughs that are taking place that are completely changing the fabric of our reality. Which I asked a question earlier when Michaela was channeling about blockchain and how that's revolutionizing the world and our society. So we can talk about those things afterward and what effect that's going to have and already is having in the world. You obviously know about blockchain.
I do.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll let Barb talk a little bit about herself, and then we can continue.
Well, I was a preemie back in the 40s where they didn't always make it. I was 4 pounds, I went down to 3, and I was 21 inches long. And I was in an incubator for a month. So I have my aura color is yellow, and I had a red overlay on it because I had to protect my eyes. Now, a red overlay is put on a child. It's a conscious decision for a child between birth and 3 for something that they have no control over that would cause them physical harm or mental harm or emotional and mine was physical for the fact that oxygen destroys eyes, and they didn't know that back then. And being an incubator with the oxygen constantly on my eyes, I had no choice but to put that on. So a lot of times, I've always seen like the aura, but I didn't know it was that color. I always called it glowing, and I never thought anything about it because I was an only child till I was 6 years old, and because I was an only child. And I really didn't have interactions with other people. For me, glowing, when people were glowing, they would be glowing different colors, and I would I would perceive that sometimes I think they're not really happy, or, oh, that's not a nice person. But, it was mostly my intuition that was picking this up. I really didn't know much about any of this stuff. And it wasn't until, I was at work one day, and I work at the post office. I'm retired. But one of my coworkers came running up to me, and he wasn't glowing. And he looked really scared. So I went and I asked him, "What's wrong with you?" And he wouldn't talk to me. And then he went and disappeared. And I was throwing magazines. We were sorting them in different groups. So, because I worked in the box section, and you had to break them down to areas, so you didn't want to run from this box and go over there and then come back. Waste of time. So I decided to put everything down and go find my coworker and find out what was going on with him. And I found out that he went in the men's bathroom and died. So at that time I thought, ooh, if you're not glowing, you're going to die. So after that, every time I got on an airplane, I had to, to this day, I want to see the pilot and co-pilot. Because if they aren't glowing, I'm not going. But I had an experience, we were heading back to Detroit, and our plane dropped like 500 feet, and luggage fell out, and oxygen came out, and everything. People were screaming and crying, and I looked around at all of them. I said, "Oh, you're all glowing. We're going to be just fine." And they quieted the plane down. So that's, that has been part of what's kind of helped, me to kind of help other people. But it wasn't until my 30s when I went to a feminist therapist, because I was dealing with crap. If you ever worked at the post office, you know anything about it. They're not very nice to their employees. They really aren't. And you have to deal with stuff. And so I was trying to deal with stuff. And so in the conversations of talking to her one day, there was a bulletin board like over there, and this little thing was jumping around the bulletin board. And so I was laughing at that and not paying attention to the therapist. She says, "Well, what are you looking at?" And I said, "Well, there's this little mouse jumping around that board." So then she said she dreamed that she divided herself into the land of two. So she divided herself in half in order to understand people. She's handing half of herself to the other person, and half of herself she'd stay with her. And she says, she was just thinking about what she's going to put on the bulletin board. So I got upset. I said, "So you're not paying any attention to me. You're looking at the bulletin board." So she said, "Do you know what that is?" And I said, "I haven't the faintest idea." And she said, "Well, that's an aura." I said, "Oh, okay, aura." So then I began to look what aura means. And I found Barbara Bowers. She's a famous aura reader from California. And I went to her class, and I sat way in the back. And when I'm really nervous about stuff, I tend to turn into a turtle, and I'm looking at it, And so I held my aura in so tight that I couldn't, until I could finally relax. She finally said, "Aha." She told me what color I was, and she says, "You see him too." She says, "Get up here." So from the rest of the class, she and I were talking about everybody's colors. And she said, "This is what this means. This is what that means." And I'm going, "Oh, okay." But because I've been an interpreter for the hearing impaired, and if, when you're an interpreter, you like I'm talking to you to tell you what you're saying, and vice versa. That's really none of my business. So I got to feel in the same way about the aura colors. Once I knew exactly what they all meant, then I felt, oh, it's kind of almost like an invasion of privacy if go too deep without people's permission. So I learned to kind of dial it down. So I look and make sure everybody's glowing. Everyone's glowing, by the way, and your energy's going good. But I don't get in too deep on colors unless I have permission. For me, that's extremely important. So, synchronicity. I went to a gas station one day. I had one of these days where I wanted to get gas, and everything kept stopping me from going, taking off. So, and I finally said, "Go to the gas station right now." And so I went to the gas station. I had a little PT Cruiser, and I saw somebody that had one just like mine. And it had a little trailer hitch on it. So something told me, if you don't go talk to that person, you're going to always regret it. So I went and talked to him and found out that they had a Camco camper that the trailer hitch pulled, so the motorcycle can pull one of those. So in knowing them and meeting them, and throughout that, they ended up saying, "Well, you want to go to a raw food potluck?" I'm going, "Oh, it's not raw meat, is it?" Because I was envisioning all kinds of weird stuff. And they said, no. It's like fruit, vegetables, nuts, different things, and they just make it in different ways to, it's supposed to be good for your body. And I said, okay, I'll keep an open mind, but I'm looking at all this food and going, And so each person described what they made and what they had in it. And I thought, oh, I'll try that and that and that, but I'm not trying that one. But yeah, it surprisingly was really good. And I noticed everybody's so happy there. And then when I was looking around at everybody, I saw him. And then I said, oh, I got to talk to him before I leave. And so that's what started everything. They wanted to know why I needed to talk to him. I said, no, I just need to. So, and I went and talked to him. I said, oh my God, you've got the largest aura I've ever seen. And because I didn't know many, gurus or any of that, the only one I knew of was Gandhi. I said, oh my God, you're like Gandhi. He's miles, but his aura was so huge. I told him, I said, you have a gift, you got to use it. So then he went and he tested me. He was showing me all these different guys, and I was telling him the auras, and after all, they all looked the same, but I was consistent with the colors. And so after all his testing and energy transfer, we went first in Troy and all that. He decided that, yeah, she knows what she's talking about. So here we are.
So no one's going to die today?
No, nobody's going to die today. But, it did happen. It was on going back from Ann Arbor on 96, 96, coming back towards 23. And I had a friend with me, and she was driving, and there was this guy with a chopper motorcycle, and he was zipping through the traffic, and I told her he's racing to his death. She said, oh, Barb, how can you say that? I said, doesn't have an aura, he's not glowing, and I said, we're going to see him a few miles up the road dead, and we did. And she was absolutely shocked. So, yeah, I mean, he wasn't the first person I seen go, but that was I pretty shocked my friend. She was going, whoa. So, yeah, it was really sad. I wish there had been something I could have done to stop him from doing that, but, I guess it was his destiny, So sometimes that's why I try not to look too hard. That's why I learned to dial it down, because, it's kind of upsetting at times, because I actually had a acupuncturist that wanted me to work with him with cancer patients, but I had a full-time job back then, so I couldn't do that. But, I suppose there's many ways that you can utilize these talents. So, yeah.
Any of you hear of Edgar Casey? I'm sure you must have, right? Some of you. So Edgar Casey, there's a famous story of him getting into an elevator in a high-rise building, and when the elevator door opened, the people in the elevator already had no auras, and he didn't know what that meant at the time. He also could see auras very well, and so it scared him. So he didn't get on the elevator. He just stepped back and waited, and the elevator cable broke and everybody died. So it seems like a very consistent phenomenon that does exist. Now, I don't know too many people who can see auras to that degree other than Barb. So it's, we are all born with that ability to some degree or another, right? But most of us have it conditioned out of us. No, we're all here for unique purposes and unique ways of expressing ourselves. Some of us are unusually gifted at channeling. Others are unusually gifted at seeing energy fields. I possess neither of those abilities, but everybody has something. So anyway, what we're going to do here today is what I call an energy transfer, and it's something that I'm uniquely here to do. So that's what I'm here to contribute in the world. And I always had a sense that I was going to do something. But I'm sure all of you probably have some sense as well, because I hear that a lot from people that I speak with every day, is I feel like I'm here to do something. But a lot of people, either out of the result of energetic blocks or fear, which are interrelated really, or other kind of density in your environment has prevented your awakening. Sometimes it's genetically engineered foods can cause that. Fluoridation in the water can cause that. Chemtrails that are being sprayed can cause that. Those things can have a vibrational effect on your energy field that inhibits or slows down your awakening process and your realization of what makes you special and why you're here in this reality. We're all here for something unique, but in our society, we're conditioned to all kind of fit into the same little mold. So the majority of people do the same things as everybody else. And they all sit in their cubicles and do what they do, but never quite feel fulfilled. But in reality, we're all here for something very special and unique. And if you could find what that is for you, then the world would be a better place because you're here. So the energy transfer, part of what it does is it will remove some of this density that you're carrying in your energy field. Come as often as you can to these events. Use the YouTube videos in between, or if you want something more advanced, join one of the more advanced programs. Because the more you participate, the more of that density will remove and more will be able to raise your consciousness and your vibration so that you can start discovering why you're here and step out into a different kind of version of your reality. And so we're not going to remove all the density today at once for most of you, although it could be done. But most people, that would be too much of an adjustment. Your physical body takes a period of time to adjust to vibrational changes. So, and that can be, in some cases, for people who are brand new to this, in some rare cases I've had, they've had a little bit more adjustment. Like maybe your head feels a little heavier, or you have a little bit of a headache for a day, or you're really tired for a few days. That may happen if this is your first time. It may not. It just depends on where you are when we start, which all of you are going to be different. If you've been doing this already, either through YouTube videos or in person, then there won't be really any sort of an adjustment. If you're sensitive to energy, you may already feel the energy at play in the room. A lot of people, as soon as they walk in the room, they'll feel it if they're highly sensitive. Or when we turn up the volume in a few minutes, you may feel it. Now that may be energy, it may feel like temperature change, it may be some of you start crying for no reason that you're aware of. Occasionally we've had people laugh out loud for no reason. It's because when we remove the density, so I refer to it as karmic density. Now, karma has a certain connotation in spiritual circles, so let me clear up when I use the word what I mean. Karma is, in my explanation and use, something that has happened in another timeline or another time space than where we are right now. So that could have been yesterday, it could have been another lifetime, it could be a future lifetime, it could be a parallel lifetime, it could be a parallel lifetime in another density, another dimensional reality that you're having right now. All of those realities create density. And so karmic density is, let's say, for example, in another incarnation, you had a relationship with somebody, a romantic relationship, which is quite common with soulmates. You've been together many lifetimes. And because you've been together many lifetimes, some of those lifetimes didn't turn out so great. And maybe you had some difficulties or suffering in that lifetime. And that can carry forward into this one. And so let's say in this one, you meet that partner again. You feel like you've known them forever. So there's that familiarity. But as soon as you get together with them, it's just turbulent, a lot of difficulty and suffering. We hear this a lot among soulmate relationships. It's because you've been together so many times that in some of those lifetimes you caused each other suffering, or you were in a situation where you mutually experienced suffering. And that suffering comes forward into this reality as density, as vibration. Doesn't mean that you'll experience the same suffering in this lifetime, but that density or that vibration just kind of weighs down your human experience and can cause problems to occur in that relationship. Whether you're causing it or it's an external cause, in some way it will express. So that's one way density can be there. Density can also be created by other things like environmental influences, electromagnetic fields, chemtrails, things like that, which also create density in your vibrational field. And that density can result in different kinds of suffering, health problems, problems in relationships, things of that nature. Now, if we remove the density, let's say you have that same karmic relationship with your soulmate, and you've been going through difficulty, you remove the density. Without the density, the relationship is just a relationship. It is just the familiarity between two people without the density causing suffering. At which point, a lot of relationships will break up because most relationships that are of that nature come together because they're suffering. They come together because there's density in order to teach each other something to overcome whatever that is. So when the density is gone, the two people are just not interested in each other anymore. And so they move on. So that could happen. But on the other hand, the same relationship could become a positive one and a really great one because now there's not the density there. So the karma is the fact that the relationship exists in the first place from a relationship that's existed in the past. The density is what makes the karma difficult and makes the relationship difficult. So without the density, our lives are a lot easier. We know why we're here, we step onto our path, and so on. But that having been said, this is where I remember to say my disclaimer, which is if you are happy suffering in the relationships that you're in right now, then you should leave the room before we do this, because a lot of people who I'm around often enough, their relationships do break up. And so it's very consistent and it's reliable. It's because a lot of relationships are based on our density. So when the density isn't there, even if I'm not intentionally facilitating an energy transfer, this energy is always present in my energy field. So people who just hang around long enough, that sort of thing happens. People who join our team, that sort of thing happens, even though I don't do it on purpose. So if you are happy suffering, then you should not be here because I'm not responsible for your happiness. So if your life becomes happier. Yeah. So we don't have a lot of time to get really in depth into both of our stories, but certainly there are lots of YouTube videos out there. Barb did a workshop last month, I think, or a couple of months, I don't know.
No, October, I think.
Was it that long ago?
No, it seems like.
On Auras, which is out on YouTube now. So if you want to learn more about her and how all that works, you can watch that on YouTube and just search her name on YouTube.
It was called How to Create a Energy Circle with Crystals and Rocks and How It Affects Your Aura. Mm-hmm. And I had several volunteers from the audience.
Yeah, so that'll give you a little bit clearer idea. And the same for me. My life story is quite lengthy, so I'm not going to bore you with the details, but there are plenty of YouTube videos out there that go a little bit more in depth. But what I do want to say is, so this physical body, and I didn't know any of this prior to the last several years, at least not consciously, but because I have the luxury of having amazing people around me all the time these days, like Barb and Michaela, I've been able to tap into understanding what this is and how it works, and so writing the instruction manual for all of that over the last several years. But because of that, I've had a chance to speak with this collective consciousness that facilitates this energy transfer, and speak with my spirit guides and all of that, and understand that I came into this life with this ability at birth, and that my physical body had to be prepared in a certain way to be able to do this in this life. So you shouldn't try this at home. And also that my soul had to go through many incarnations with the intention of preparing to do this in this one. So this is something that I'm uniquely able to do in this incarnation because of the preparation that I went through to do that. and that when I came into this incarnation, it was with the agreement that I would be doing this without my knowledge. And so there is a collective of beings that on YouTube, if you search, or on my website, there's a video where Michaela channels this collective, and I have a chance to ask them questions about this. So if you want more in depth, you can watch that. But basically, there's a collective of beings that facilitates this process through this physical body. And the reason is that their vibration is so high that they can't send that energy directly to this dimension. They needed a physical anchor in this reality that was able to coexist in a third dimension, but also be able to connect to a 13th dimension so that they could channel that energy through from the 13th dimension into the third for all of you. So for that reason, this physical body was prepared in such a way to be able to do that. So with that agreement, they've been using this physical body since my birth for that purpose anywhere where I was, without my knowledge. So so a lot of people over the years have had interesting things happen around when I'm there, and I've had a lot of very unusual things happen in my life, which in my earlier life I had no explanation for, and I just kind of put them away as that didn't really happen. Until the last several years, I didn't understand why those things happened. And so now I understand the purpose behind this, and we do these events intentionally. And we've had many years of experience now to be able to see the effects that it has on individuals. And also on YouTube videos, on radio broadcasts. So this energy and this collective consciousness is present in my voice, in my videos of me, in my pictures, or simply with my intention. So this is why if you watch some of the YouTube videos of our energy transfers, you'll see the comments from people who are having similar experiences just watching the videos without my conscious awareness. So at any point, 24 hours a day, people are facilitating this process through this physical body without my conscious knowledge of it. So this collective consciousness is multidimensional. They are aware of everything that's taking place at all times. And so so when somebody facilitates this from somewhere else, they are aware of that intention to do that, and they're able to facilitate it without me being consciously part of the equation. So that's how that process happens. Any questions so far? Yeah.
I want to hear from Barb about what she sees in the room right now.
Oh,
Okay.
well, I keep seeing this guy over here. He keeps staring at, he's waving, and he's right over there in that corner.
I feel it.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like big time energy.
Right. I mean, he's been making faces, and he's been kind of waving, and
It's like thing going on in the room.
yeah.
I was wondering why you guys were making faces at each other. I thought, am I doing something wrong?
No. It's this guy over there.
Okay.
Now he's moving.
What does he look like?
Huh?
What does he look like to you both?
He's got like a hood, he's like a monk, suit on him, and he's got really piercing black eyes, and but he for some reason he's been trying to get my attention, so I've been.
I'm just feeling the vibration of something in the room. Like I don't usually feel it. It's so.
Yeah, very, very strong, it's like, they haven't let me see their face totally, since I freaked out that one time. But he's just wanting me to know, to acknowledge that I see him and he's in the room. Yeah.
Who is he? No.
Maybe just going to help with
Yeah.
everything,
These sorts of things happen all the time. So this is the world that we live in, this multidimensional, very fascinating world. I used to live a very normal mainstream life, prior to 7 years ago. And now this is the universe that I live in, that all of you can live in too if you don't already. This is the future that we're heading into as a world where these kinds of things are just part of our normal reality. And this is why we do everything we do, our kids program, all of these things. We're just trying to usher in that new future that's been prophesied for tens of thousands of years. We are at that moment right now, in that awakening of consciousness, in a future where it's described in the Bible as heaven on earth, an age of enlightenment. We're at the early stages of that, and we're seeing signs of it everywhere. Just don't watch the mainstream media, but other than that, So the energy transfer process is a two-part process. You may already be feeling that energy. There is a collective consciousness that facilitates it, so you can't do it wrong. You simply have to be here with the intention to participate. I will provide you with some instructions on how you can be more consciously part of the process, but if you just sit there and relax and do nothing, it'll be fine. They'll facilitate it. Barb can see it happening in the room. We've never had it fail with even one person in all the years we've done it. So we know it works, whether you feel the energy or you don't, whether you have any sort of a physical sensation of any kind or anything like that is not necessary. If you do, great. If you don't, also great. So it'll be two parts. I will ask you to send your density to me, which you can just simply sit there with that intention. Or if you want, you can visualize it as a dark cloud of energy and send it to me in the front of the room. Understand that your energy is not going to hit anybody else on the way to me. A collective consciousness is essentially going to be pulling it from you. So, and as it comes toward me, it will disintegrate as it enters or comes near my energy field. So it has no effect on me either. And I've done this with, even the whole collective consciousness of the planet, and Barb's been there to watch that. So you don't have to worry about anything happening to me. This is a unique time that we're in the awakening of consciousness, which is the reason why we're having the opportunity to release so much density, which may otherwise take you lifetimes to do. Because the Earth is going through an accelerated period of awakening, opportunities like this are being made available to us to move forward more quickly. So that's part of the process. You're going to keep sending that energy to me. We'll go until Barb tells us we're done. She's going to be observing the energy fields in the room, and when she feels like you've had enough, we'll stop. Because from her perception, too much is too much for some people, and so we don't want to overload you today. And at the same time, I'm going to be sending an energy from my heart center to each of yours, which will raise your consciousness, your vibration. It'll expand your energy field at least a few times. And there's also multidimensional information contained in this energy. So you may think of it as there's 13-dimensional energy, and in that energy, all the knowledge that comes with it, that is coming from this collective consciousness, is embodied in that energy. It is embodied in the vibration of the energy. Your mental, intellectual mind, brain, will not be able to interpret it all right away. But over time, that information is there, and it'll start to make sense over time. So that may result in you becoming aware of your spiritual gifts. It may result in you shifting timelines and having an entirely different human experience. That may result in you seeing your reality very differently than what you saw it as when you walked in, or all of the above. So there is information that is present there that will change your reality. So some of you may experience a reawakening or an awakening of spiritual gifts that you didn't know were there, or have been suppressed or been dormant since childhood. All of those kinds of things do occur from these. And as more often as you come, the more you can make progress toward that. Any questions about anything? Okay, so just kind of relax and breathe comfortably. And I'm going to play a little music in the background. Okay, I want you to focus your mind and your intention on anything in your life that's causing you stress or negative emotions. or just hold the intention of releasing any karmic density that you're ready to release today. And if you'd like, you can visualize that as a dark cloud of energy and send that to me from your energy body to mine, and keep sending it until I ask you to open your eyes. And as you do that, I'm going to be sending a white light from my heart center to yours to raise your consciousness, expand your energy field. And I'll be doing that for the whole time as well. So I'll be silent now, and my eyes will be closed as well, and I'll ask you to open your eyes when we're done. Okay. Well, if you felt anything or felt nothing, the effects are still there. So what did you see?
Well, before the transfer, everybody was kind of. Michaela really had a good one. You threw a lot of stuff. I saw that. I mean, well, before you had so much darkness around you, and I just saw. Oh yeah, it was just.
During the transfer?
Oh yeah, and I just watched. Yeah, I just
I
watched.
kind of like, it's interesting that you say that, because like I don't, but it's been, I mean, when I first started doing Ethan's energy transfers, I was like I would throw specific stuff. And then I kind of just like, I'll just let my guides do it. But this is the first time in a long time that I was like, I aligned specific things before I started. Like I haven't done that in a long time. I had 4 specific things. I was like, this, and this, go. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it was hovering over you, before, and I watched your aura just clear up. And what the other thing was I noticed is the energy levels of everybody, like yours were pretty close, and I watched you stretch out about almost, more than double up, and everyone's in the aura, everyone's auras in different energies was reaching up to the internet, the whatever the being is up there, the connections, the grid, yeah. And I was watching everybody, and as I was watching it, everyone's like wanting to yearn to touch it, and some people are, and some people haven't yet, but everybody was really wanting to. And so not only did they, get rid of negative stuff, but everybody's, was reached up as like, here I am. So that's what I felt this time. And I mean, I was watching yours, was just going shimmering out to everybody, so it was, this is a really good one. And they're always different, but it was interesting, but I felt like everybody got a lot out of this one.
Anyone have any questions or comments or anything you want to share?
Is our visitor still here?
No, he left. Yeah.
I'm tuning into Jeremiah for that. I feel like that's like because it was, the feeling of that being was with me ever since I stopped channeling. Like I just had this crazy high vibration, like sitting here, and I just knew there was somebody there, something in the room, and that's kind of what I'm dialing into.
Yeah, well, he was there.
He wasn't here for that. He was here.
Yeah, something, but I mean, he was
checking
waving
up on
us. Maybe checking up on us, but he certainly got my attention, I said, okay, I see you.
When you get back, can you pass that out?
Yes.
So we do collect donations. No, you don't have to donate if you can't or you don't want to. It's okay. It's just to pay for the facility rental and our various programs and so on. But we try to do this free of charge to the public, so we don't require any kind of donation. So your question earlier, can you restate that? What was it about why we are at this point in time? What was your question?
The blockchain.
Blockchain and something else, right? Why are we at this? What was your question? Your question earlier. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm still.
Oh, okay, that's okay. I'll try to rephrase.
I got it. I was wondering, what are some of the other examples that you had of us changing?
Mm-hmm. And I think you also asked, why are we changing or something?
And why are we accelerating so fast at this point? It's technology that's creating this, so it's a lot of people that come together.
Oh, well, those are symptoms. I mean, technology is not the cause. That's a symptom of the acceleration. The cause is, well, I mean, everything happens at the right time, and at the moment, we as a collective consciousness we've been anticipating this time for a long time. And in our linear human timeline, this is always foreseen as something that would occur at this time. You can read it in all the ancient prophecies that were, pointing to this time as a time of awakening and a time of heaven on earth and age of enlightenment and all kinds of different terminology. So this was always meant to happen at this time. Just like all the other things that maybe we don't like so much that have happened in the world in the past and the present were also always meant to happen. So we chose this to occur at this time. Now, the things that are happening in the world, technology, the internet, and so on, are all symptoms of the underlying vibration of awakening. So first there is the vibration, there's the consciousness. The consciousness creates our reality. So when you have a low consciousness, you have a world where there is war and hostility and suffering. When you have a higher consciousness, you have a world where there is peace and love and more harmony. So we are on that bridge between those two worlds. Any of you familiar, if you were in Michaela's channeling sessions, one of the questions that came for us to ask her was about cymatics. Do any of you not know what cymatics is? Okay. So cymatics is a study of sound. We had a speaker who was an expert in that at our expo a few years back. It's basically a study of sound and how sound affects reality. And so in cymatics, they use sound vibration. So if you search cymatics on YouTube, you'll see a lot of videos where they use sound and they put sand on a plate or something, and they'll show how changing the frequency of sound alters the shape of the sand. It'll form different mandalas. One of the interesting experiments that they show is when they change the frequency from a lower frequency to a significantly higher frequency, first you'll see this one shape, and then all of a sudden it'll just morph into another shape that's much more complex. But in that in-between place, before it goes from one shape to another, the sand goes chaotic. So there's chaos in the sand. There's no shape. It's just chaos. But then all of a sudden it just instantaneously shifts to this much more complex pattern. So we are in that place of chaos right now, moving from a lower complexity to a much higher complexity as a being multidimensionally, as a being physically, as a global reality. So what you're observing in the world with all the craziness taking place, but also amazing things, is that space between the two different vibrations. Because cymatics is just vibration. It's a study of vibration. So what we're seeing vibrationally taking place on our planet is also is affecting the complexity of our organism, our multidimensionality. So the future is a future where we exist in a much higher vibration as a much more complex version of ourselves. And that's what we're seeing happening. This is why there are people like Michaela and Barb, and I'm sure all of you, if you haven't yet discovered your unique place here, you will soon enough. But in my world, I'm surrounded by incredibly talented, gifted people in all different walks of life. Michaela mentioned earlier my Lightworker program, where I work with people like Michaela, for example, to help them to discover what their gifts are and launch them out into the world in their unique, special way. What's cool about that is I'm meeting people who are coming to me in the beginning who are coming from mainstream backgrounds, people who are in the biotechnology industry, people who are medical doctors, teachers, scientists, engineers, who are all starting to have spiritual awakenings and realizing they can't do that mainstream thing anymore, and wanting to move into something that's much more spiritually based, much more multidimensionally based. So when you're starting to see things like that happen on a mainstream level, well, it's happening everywhere then. I mean, it's not just a few people who are reaching out to me. So we're seeing many changes with individuals who all over the world. At our expo, we had, I think you met her. I didn't actually have a chance to, well, if I did meet her, I don't know who she was, but we had a famous movie or TV producer from Hollywood come out to the expo. She emailed me a few months before and said she just had a spiritual awakening 6 months before that time, and suddenly her life doesn't make any sense. And and she's very well known. She produces a very popular TV show, which I can't remember at the moment, but
She was very nice.
Yeah, so here's an individual from mainstream world who has had an amazing awakening, who suddenly is trying to figure out what this means. So this is happening everywhere to people just like you, people who are on the mainstream level, who are starting to have that moment of chaos before they become a different version of themselves. So there's that happening. Now, on a technological side, now I know that a lot of people, especially with spiritual mindsets, think technology is evil, but let's, the internet has opened us up to, I see the internet as a global collective consciousness. We're able to have our thoughts here broadcast to anyone in the world instantaneously. That's, our technological version of global telepathic communication. How many of you don't know what blockchain is? None of you. Any of you know what blockchain is at all? A little bit. Okay. So, well, out of we as human beings tend to be discouraged by things that are happening in the world. But what we don't realize is whenever there is enough discouragement happening in the world in any one area, the simultaneous solution to the problem pops out at the same time. Exactly the same time. But we don't notice it because it isn't until years later that it becomes known. Well, back in 2008, when we had the global financial chaos taking place, and people were complaining about the 2% or the 1% of the people who control the world and have all the money, at that time, blockchain technology emerged. It was introduced into the world. Nobody knew what it was. Some of you know of one symptom of blockchain technology, which is cryptocurrency, Bitcoin currency. Now, maybe you're not aware of Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is based on blockchain. Blockchain is a certain type of software algorithm that makes possible things, a world of things. Blockchain is sort of like the internet at its inception. So if you can imagine when the internet was first created, brought into this reality, blockchain was brought into this reality in 2009. So it's very young. So imagine where it could be in 20 years. It's going to have an influence much bigger than the internet has had in our reality. Now, what blockchain is it allows us to have simultaneous communication. It basically democratizes society, I guess. So let me give you a real example. So Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a non-bank-based economic means of exchange. So if right now you earn money in the United States, you have a job or some means you earn income, and you make money in dollars. You put those dollars in a bank, probably, or some kind of financial institution, which issues that money out as loans to other people. So you give the bank $100, the bank lends out $1,000 using the money that you gave them. But ultimately, they control the money, and they can shut off the bank account, they can take your money away, the IRS can seize your assets because it's centralized. The bank ultimately is the authority. Cryptocurrency or Bitcoin, for example, nobody owns it. There is no hierarchy. It's a collective consciousness way of managing money. So if you, say, have $100 in Bitcoin, which isn't a lot of Bitcoin these days, but anyhow, if you'd have bought $100 of Bitcoin back in 2009 or 2010, you'd be a billionaire by now. But anyhow, so if you have $100 in Bitcoin, for example, there is no central authority controlling that but you. So nobody can seize your money or your bank account. Nobody can tell you what to do with it. It is something that's facilitated by the whole collective of our society. Now, this is what blockchain makes available. So for example, let me give you an example of another company right now that's based on blockchain. It's a company, so I'm sure, have any of you heard of net neutrality, that whole issue going around? Okay. So net neutrality is basically our internet system is centralized, but by principle, internet isn't centralized, right? It should be a free thing that allows us to freely communicate, interact with each other. But because the internet is actually provided by different providers like Comcast and Verizon and other companies that facilitate it, they actually have the power to turn it off or turn it on or decide what you get to see or what you don't get to see. Like in some countries like China or even in the United States, some things are blocked from you being able to see them. So it's not really free. It's not really democratic. There are centralized institutions that are controlling this. In the same way that the bank institutions control your money and your financial system, or the Federal Reserve Bank decides how much money to issue into the economic system to do whatever, or to bail out banks. This is their authority to be able to do that. You don't have that authority. But blockchain gives you that authority. So there is a company, for example, using blockchain technology that has developed technology that will allow all of us to host the internet. So in the not too distant future, the internet will not be provided to you by Comcast. It'll be provided to you by you and your neighbor and their neighbor and their neighbor. So there's no central point of failure. So if somebody's device goes out or power turns off, there are a billion other people in the world who are providing the internet. So nobody controls it. Everybody provides it for everybody else. So blockchain is providing those kinds of resources. There are blockchain companies that are democratizing the energy, utility companies, for example. So you won't be buying your power from DTE or Consumers Energy anymore.
Yeah, I just read about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you'll be sharing it with your neighbor. So there are blockchain technologies that are democratizing the whole music and movie industry, to where rather than having a movie company like MGM or Paramount or whatever own the rights to films and facilitate and fund and finance all those things, every individual will be able to function individually within that ecosystem and come together and share from the benefits of that without any centralized authority. Now, the long-term implications of this are we don't need a government anymore, because there will not be a need for a centralized authority to tell us how things are going to be done, because as a collective, we'll be able to decide that through blockchain technology. Blockchain is already making it possible now. We know that we're going to have self-driving cars very soon on the road. And well, there are some already, but through blockchain, you can have fully autonomous self-driving cars. There's a company out there that's working on that, blockchain technology, meaning that you'll be able to go on to Uber, pay for a car, the car gets paid, it picks you up, drops you off, it uses the money that you paid through blockchain to go to the service station to be serviced, to refuel or whatever it needs to do, get back on the road. There's no human being involved in that process. So it's a completely autonomous, self-driving vehicle that basically makes its own decisions, does its own thing, takes care of itself. So in so many ways, that's going to revolutionize our whole society, our whole structure. If we want to vote for something, we don't need a leader to vote a leader into office so that the leader can decide to do something completely different than what we voted them in for. We as a collective through blockchain can make those decisions. So this is what it makes possible, yeah.
What was the name of that company that you mentioned?
Which one?
The one you're just giving an example of.
The internet one, you mean? There are several.
You just said, I'll give you this example. This company, for example, is doing this.
Okay. Well, there's for the
With an N, maybe? No, did it start with an N?
Net neutrality.
net neutrality. Oh, net neutrality.
Is that the name of the company? Or is it
No. Net neutrality is a movement basically to. Yeah. So the company, I believe that one was called Substratum, and.
Maybe I heard. Maybe I'm just.
I didn't mention the names. I didn't mention any names. So I believe that one was Substratum. I think that's the one that's doing the internet technology. So the technology, they've already developed it, they're going to deploy it soon, and essentially you'll get paid to host the internet out of your own home. So basically it's a whole new model for the internet where each individual provides the internet, not a company that provides the internet for everybody. See, this is happening in society everywhere. Look at the internet. It is facilitated by everybody. There is no central authority creating the internet. Think about crowdfunding. I mean, banks are going to become obsolete because, well, A, we have cryptocurrency. We don't need banks anymore, which means that the IRS cannot really technically tax people anymore because the only power that they have is to seize your assets if you don't pay. Well, there's no way for anyone to gain control of crypto assets. So Bitcoin cannot be seized. So if you have $1 million in Bitcoin sitting somewhere, it sits there because all of us authorize it to sit there. It's a collective agreement among everybody.
I see the banks fighting back.
Yes, okay, so I can tell you what's going to happen. In the near future, you're going to see a big O.J. Simpson kind of trial where they're going to put some multi-millionaire cryptocurrency guy on trial for not paying his taxes, and they'll make a big deal out of it to try to scare the 95% of people who have made millions in cryptocurrency in recent years who are not paying their taxes. Because that's actually true. Very small percentage of the people who just became millionaires in cryptocurrency in recent years most of them have not paid their taxes. Something like 3 or 4% paid their taxes. So there are billions of dollars in taxes that are not being collected. So imagine, and in society right now, only about 2% are even in cryptocurrency. So imagine 20 years from now when 50 to 75% of society is using cryptocurrency. How many people are going to pay their taxes?
To me, taxes are nothing more than control. I want to control your consumption.
Basically, yeah.
If I print money, why do I need your money? I mean, I just push a button on my HP printer, prints out dollar bills.
Right.
So
Money has no value.
it's not hard.
Money has no value. We just believe it does.
Right. It's a virtual agreement. I mean, they're pieces of paper that mean nothing. We give it meaning. So electronic money, cryptocurrency is just the next step of that. We already do that. We have debit cards that are not worth anything. They're just plastic, right? The only difference between cryptocurrency and our debit cards or credit cards is that cryptocurrency has no centralized authority making it okay for you to use that money. So, or telling you when you're out, or being able to seize your bank accounts or whatever. So cryptocurrency, there is no way for anyone to take your cryptocurrency. Once it's out there, it's yours and only yours unless you decide to give it away to somebody. So nobody can control it. So if you can't control it, well, you can't really control people as well. So we're heading into a decentralized future where the world and all of its services and everything is going to be provided by everyone as opposed to centralized authority. The decisions are going to be made by everyone as opposed to centralized authority. So blockchain technology is just one of the physical, tangible things that are taking place in our physical reality right now that's making it possible for us to move as a society, as a three-dimensional society, into a future that is more fair, that's more equal, that has where we make the laws. We decide what's right and wrong. We don't put people in power to do that. Take for example, in the recent years, we've had a lot of different kinds of businesses opening up in the fields of social economy. So, for example, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, the various crowdfunding organizations out there that are making it possible for us as individuals to provide things for each other, whether it's lending for businesses through crowdfunding, or whether it is taxi service without going to a taxi company, just a regular person picks you up and drops you off, or renting somebody else's home when you travel, or having somebody watch your dog through a socially provided service versus a company providing those things. In every single way, we're seeing us moving toward a society that is crowdsourced, that is socially provided, as opposed to provided by a hierarchical system. So now the reason this is all happening now, so the age of Aquarius, which started to come into play around the 1950s or so, is accelerating. And see, I've always believed that the age of Aquarius would really start to happen in the 2020s through the mid-2040s, because that's when the planet Pluto goes into Aquarius. And Pluto really intensifies any sign that it's in. And right now it's been in Capricorn for the last 10 years or so. And Capricorn is the sign that where our structures or our governments and our hierarchies become stronger. So in the last 10 years, we've had more regulations and more control of the people. But when it goes into Aquarius for about 20 years, starting in 2022, we're starting to see the early signs of it now. We're moving toward a socially oriented society, one where the people are in power, not the governments. And that's why we're seeing things like crowdsourced technologies, like cryptocurrencies, like all the different kinds of blockchain services and products that are coming down the line. And somebody who was formerly on our team has become kind of an expert in cryptocurrency, but he pointed out to me the planet Uranus is going into Aquarius in Taurus this May, which the last time it was in Taurus was 1934 or something like that, somewhere in the early 1930s. And that was when the SEC came into being. So that was the last major financial institution that governs our markets came into play. Well, it's going into Taurus again in May. So what does that mean? That means that we're about to see the creation of an entirely new financial structure, an entirely new exchange system, which is happening with the with the different blockchain technologies, cryptocurrency. May. Now,
it also happened in 34 when they had this government made gold illegal.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So. Okay. So Taurus is a sign, among other things, that represents money, or our financial, how we treat money, our financial system. So when the planet Uranus enters Taurus, you see a time when our existing way of treating money is completely revolutionized and innovated into something totally new. So in the time that it's in Taurus, which will be several years, I think it leaves around 2022 or so, or 2021. So between now and 2021-22, the whole financial system is going to be reinvented, and something new will be put in place. I'm not saying that the dollar is not going to exist or anything like that, but if you can imagine several years more of cryptocurrency becoming popularized, which is already, I mean, when Bitcoin was first popular or became popular, everybody said it's going to fail, it's never going to work, and government criticized it. But now you can pay for your Dell computer with Bitcoin if you want to. Or Overstock.com accepts Bitcoin now. So you're starting to see major companies starting to adopt this as a means of exchange. So what happens in another 4 or 5 years of that? Where will we be? And what kind of a financial structure will that be? And even a lot of the major exchange houses or brokerage firms wouldn't touch Bitcoin, but now they're also adding it to their portfolios, which means that the establishment is taking it seriously now. But the significance of it is the fact that it is totally decentralized and that we control it as a population, as a collective consciousness. It's not controlled by any one individual or any one body of people. It's a whole new technological revolution that is going to revolutionize how we live. How we make decisions, how we provide services for each other. The whole structure of society is about to change, and that's just one example. But we're seeing it on so many different levels coming down the line. And Pluto in Aquarius is basically, in one word, it is community. It is crowd. So any kind of service or product or anything of that nature that is based on community is going to thrive during that time, which is why we're seeing these different kinds of services that are based on crowdsourcing or community-based services are becoming really prevalent in our society. But imagine, 20 years from now, if all services are provided by everybody, if the internet is housed in everybody's home, if there are no utility companies because we share power, if there are cars that drive themselves that are fully autonomous, what kind of society that will be? It'll be, a much more enlightened society. In some countries, I believe Iceland, they now have a base income that the government pays out to people. So I think it's something like $35,000 a year, and then you can do whatever you want with your life. So you can just live off of $35,000 and do nothing, or you can get a side hobby or another job and make extra money, but everybody has a base amount of income. So it's not socialism, where socialism really concentrates power at the top. It's basically everybody has an equal, fair life, and then you can do what you want with it. I believe it's Iceland. You should look it up, but don't quote me on the location, but I'm pretty sure it was that. Yeah.
So you're packing your bags already, and you're like.
Well, they've got intelligent robots now that they're AIs that they're teaching, letting them learn through the internet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's so. Barb brought up a point about so a lot of people are concerned about artificial intelligence, and so anything is a problem if the consciousness is low. So yes, if we had artificial intelligence with the level of consciousness that's present at the moment and in the past, yeah, we're all in trouble. But if you're moving toward a highly conscious future where the vibration of the planet is higher, all that it exists here has to match that vibration. And secondly, that kind of a future is not a hierarchical future. It's not a future where we have leaders at the top who decide how we live our lives, or taxes that go into the pockets of a few people and don't actually do anything for us. So that society has to be a community-based society where we take care of each other. If you think about it, blockchain technology is, at its core, us taking care of each other. My internet is going to be provided by you. My power is going to be provided by all of you. If I want to take a cab somewhere, it's going to be provided by all of you. So it's not going to be provided by Hilton or the checkered cab company or Comcast or any of those companies. So in that kind of a future, any kind of artificial intelligence that exists will also match that vibration and that consciousness. We don't have to fear those things. That having been said, I'm not very eager to put devices in my house where they're listening to what I'm doing on purpose anyway. Yeah. To some extent, Yeah. So, but because right now those are centralized. They're centralized. The information is collected by centralized organizations. But we're not heading into that direction. We're heading into a future where we can live with artificial intelligence, and it's not a problem because it's controlled by all of us. We all have. We're all taking care of each other in society. And people as a whole are not really out to get each other.
They're also working on free energy, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are lots of means. That free energy technology has been suppressed for a long time. But when we don't have utility companies, it's not going to be a problem. But even in the short term, solar is becoming more readily available to people. That's a very mainstream free energy. You can now, the Tesla company put out shingles for your roof that cost the same as regular shingles that are solar powered. So you can put shingles on your house, it'll power your house with solar, and you're off the grid. So there are lots of ways to access that. But there are going to be more unusual, exotic energy technologies
Where
coming
you
out.
won't need batteries.
Where you won't need anything, yeah. Where everything, I mean, that's possible now. It has been possible for a long time. It's just been withheld. But those things won't be withheld when we're not living in a centralized society.
So that's how I found when I was looking for free energy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got some today, but I was looking for
Yes,
the
you did.
loading coils and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
I just find such a void of information out there on the web. Free energy.
Yeah, there is because your internet is controlled. Whether you like, I mean, even in the United States, your internet is controlled. But it is out there, and it will make its way out when people who are creating these things are not afraid to do it. A lot of inventors of these technologies either disappear, or their technology disappears, or both. I think it was in Michigan, but some years ago, there was, in the 1970s or early 80s, there was a guy by the name of Meyer who invented a water-powered car. I think it was in Michigan. Was it Michigan?
Yeah.
And and he went on the news to talk about his amazing technology and how within 6 months he can retrofit all the cars to run on water. And he vanished 2 weeks later. He was in a car accident. He was in a car accident, died, and his car vanished. It recently resurfaced, but anyhow, this is what happens to people who in the previous consciousness came forth and said, "Hey, I got this." So it's not impossible. I mean, the technology is there. It is just waiting for us to be ready. But see, that's also, we can't look at it as there are these evil corporations suppressing these things. It's us. It's our consciousness that's preventing it. When enough people on the planet have a sufficient consciousness to support free energy, we will have it. And such a world is a heart-centered world. See, understand, free energy, so let me explain in other ways. There is source, okay? Source is infinite. And so in source, there's no limitation. You have everything you want, whenever you want it. You don't have to ask, it's just there. Then there is the physical three-dimensional reality, and then there is this little barrier between that and source. So in this reality, because of our consciousness level and our density in this reality, each of you has a different amount of density, which we removed some of that today. If there was no density, then this world would be source. There would be free everything. Okay, so what does it mean that we're moving toward a world where free energy is becoming possible? That means that there's less density. And as that density becomes less and less, more of source pokes through to this reality. And as it does, we'll have those things. So it's not up to the leaders, really, it's up to us. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I know that the less density we have here, the more this world will become lighter and of a higher consciousness, and we won't have central banks, and we won't have gas pumps, and we'll basically be able to live in a freer society. We're seeing those things happening now, which means that density is becoming less and less in this reality. So now another factor of that reality is, source is love, right? I mean, in source, there is infinite everything, but there is also love. There is it's not human love like I love you, kind of human emotional love. It is source love. It is infinite. It is the absence of resistance to all that is. And, in order for us to have a society with free energy, we have to have a more heart-centered society, which means that we have to be more universally loving world. So there are several factors that are preventing us from having free energy at the moment. It's not that inventors are afraid, or it's not that power companies are preventing it from happening. Those are in the physical world, yes, of course, occurring, but ultimately it's because the barrier between us and source is still too dense for that. And as it thins out and more source comes through and our hearts open and we start moving into a more heart-centered world, we are going to have free energy. We're going to have a telepathic society, all of those things. And this is why we're teaching. I mean, there are people now teaching telepathy. So in our kids program, we'll be able to teach most, if not all of those kids how to be telepathic in a weekend. So, well, that's because kids are closer to source than us adults. They haven't been suppressed by or held down by the vibration of this reality enough yet that it's turned off. So it's easier for us to get them to a more heart-centered space to be telepathic than it is for most adults. So, but as a whole, as we move toward this world that is more heart-centered, there will be these things. There will be free energy. And it may take physical steps because in this reality we have time that we still have to deal with. But as we become more heart-centered, there will be less time. So we'll start perceiving time as not time as well. Because in a heart-centered world, there is no time. So many changes coming down the line as we slowly move in that direction. But because right now there's time, we may have to go from plugging into Edison to solar panels to the next step to free energy. So it may be a gradual step-by-step process. But I think based on the cycles that I see in the astrology, we'll see those things in the next 20 to 25 years. Just simply because Pluto in Aquarius is going to usher in a major spiritual and technological revolution.
I've been hearing it on the net already.
Yeah, I mean, if you're hearing it, and we're just at the beginning of that. We're not even into when it first enters into Aquarius, which is around 2022. So imagine if this is just the beginning, what 2022 to 2045, where it's in Aquarius, what that's going to be like. We're going to be, so many changes coming. So it's an amazing world we're heading into, and our hope is that we can be a part of bringing that into the world a little bit faster. Well, not faster, but being part of one of the agents of that change, and to help all of you to realize why you came here so that you can step out into that and be one of the people out there who are helping all of these individuals who are going through awakenings to bridge that gap from this former density to this new one. That's why you're all here. You're all revolutionaries. You're on the leading edge of that movement. The majority of people are still very much unconscious or at a lower vibration and unaware that any of this is taking place. They're still living in a normal third-dimensional world. And you are all here because on some unconscious level, you feel it's time to step forward and to be one of those individuals who plays a more key role in this future.
I find people who are afraid of this or uncertain about this are kind of the people that want to be told what to do. Some people
Yes.
really want to have that direction. I don't know if they're afraid of their own direction or they are so conditioned to believe that somebody knows more than they do. But I even find among my friends, I'm vegetarian, I wish I was vegan, but I'm not, but I'm vegetarian, and I eat raw a couple days a week. And I go out with my friends, and I'm the only one that's not ordering chicken salad. And they all look at me like, we are all ordering chicken salad. How dare you not do that? But it's because I'm a little bit different. So you can eat what you want, but don't tell me what to eat what I want. And they're very upset that I'm not following through on that role. Mm-hmm. So that's what I see primarily, and I'm a counselor, and I just kind of see people as wanting to be directed and very upset the idea that the medical community or the government is lying to us. I mean, that is just, they have a real hard time thinking that they've grown up with this conception that people are honest. Okay, they're very threatened by that they've been lied to all these years. How can people lie to them? Okay, I don't know. Why do people lie?
Well, yeah, that's, society is, the majority of society, let's take, for example, the whole blockchain technology, cryptocurrency idea. There's only about 2% of people who even know that it exists. Or, I'm sorry, 2% who are participating in it right now. We have been raised in a society, so imagine, if 90% were participating in it, what would it change in society? Most people are conditioned to, we've grown up in societies where from young children, we had a teacher in the front of the room who told us what was what. And so from an early age, we're conditioned to respect authority and to, if the teacher says it's wrong, it's wrong. And then we grow up into society, into college and the real world, and we have bosses and supervisors. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with leadership, but heart-centered leadership is a little bit different than ego-centered leadership. And so we as a society have been conditioned to trust our leaders and to believe what they say and not think that they don't have our best interests at heart. Majority of people still believe that, or want to believe that, I should say. Majority are questioning it, but they don't know how to live in a society where somebody's not telling them how things should be done. So there is, but as I said earlier, the cymatics example, this is the moment of chaos before we evolve into a very complex, higher level organism, consciousness. Well, in that moment of chaos, there are a lot of people who are going to be a little bit freaked out by all this stuff that's happening in the world, you know? They're not going to adjust very well to it. So you guys in this room probably will, but most people your age will not. It's going to be the next generation and the next generation that will be the ones that usher in that world, with the exception of a few of us. And but the rest will, you know, they'll stick around, or they'll move on to another incarnation, and that's okay too. That's the path that they chose. But you have the privilege and also the burden of being who you are in this time, where we are bridging two different realities, and you get to be a bridge in that reality. And as a result, you also are going to have to deal with those who are not bridging that, and those who are very much stuck in that other reality. Nothing wrong with that reality, but people who are in a conditioned reality are going to want to pull you into that reality because, well, what if you're right? You know, what if you're right and the world really is different than what they think? You don't want to shatter that reality, right? So people who live in that reality, they are afraid because it's a very fragile one. It's a very fragile reality, and if you start to do things that are different, like being a vegan or believing in Bitcoin or something like that, insane, you're starting to shatter their reality.
It makes them uncomfortable.
It makes them uncomfortable.
Whether it's eating a vegan salad or...
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. We're all uncomfortable at times, but being uncomfortable is a sign of something trying to change and evolve, right? Being uncomfortable is that moment of chaos. But if in that moment of chaos you don't move to the higher level organism version of yourself, you just stay in the chaos, you just stay uncomfortable. Uncomfortable happens because something is evolving in you. And if you resist that evolution, then you suffer. But if you allow the evolution to occur, something greater comes out of it. But a lot of people are, because the majority of people have a lot of density and as a result a lot of resistance, they don't evolve very easily until one day something whacks them on the head and they wake up and have this spiritual awakening and suddenly find themselves in a reality that makes no sense. This is how those people are waking up. They're not waking up out of conscious choice, you know, going to things like this. They're waking up because, well, they just get pushed one day. And that's going to happen because when enough of us awaken, the whole of the rest of society will shift. It'll have to. So everyone will have to, whether they like it or not.
I find some of the intelligent people are very upset that they were duped. Like, I am so smart.
Yeah.
How could I be duped into believing this stuff? There's no way I would have caught on before now.
Right.
And when you point out things like, you know, I could point out that chicken is probably got all kinds of chemicals in it, and they don't care. You know what I mean, at this point. Because the chemicals can't be that bad because they're still alive, right? So that's...
Plus the FDA approves it.
Yeah.
Right? They're approving it for your consumption.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing I want to make sure we understand here is that we, especially we in this room, because most of you are a higher consciousness than most people. Not that that's a good or a bad thing, so I wouldn't necessarily go out into public and say, hey, I'm a higher consciousness. You might get put in a straitjacket. But anyway, so it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just a different thing. Okay, but But the higher your consciousness, the more you impact your reality. So it's not really a question of vegan or not vegan. It's because you can eat a chicken and it could be full of genetically engineered whatever and hormones, and it could be just as healthy for you as an organic vegetable if you have the right intention or the right vibration. You can transform anything in your reality. So it's not about being vegan, being better than eating meat that's GMO or whatever. It is about the vibration that you carry while you're being whatever you're being. So you can be a janitor and be enlightened, or you can be a spiritual teacher and be enlightened, or you can be a spiritual teacher who is highly unconscious and be a janitor who is enlightened. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's the way of being is what determines that, not what you're doing or how you're doing. It's the how you're doing it, not the what you're doing. So, along those lines, we have to realize that, now, that getting back to the vegetarian-vegan issue, though, I don't want to imply that you have to all become vegan in order to become enlightened, because that's not necessarily true. But if you become highly conscious and suddenly meat just doesn't resonate, well, that's okay. And that's actually the way that it happens naturally. People become more conscious and they just don't like meat anymore. Just like maybe they don't like something else, You lose taste for things. And when you lose taste for things, you give it up. It's rather, it sort of gave you up, as opposed to, there's a difference between going out there and saying, I'm vegan and I'm against all meat eaters, and saying, I'm just being me, and I just don't like that anymore. I don't know why, but I don't like it anymore. So just like a lot of people who I meet who are in a conventional field of work and they just don't like it anymore. They don't want to do that anymore. They feel called, their heart is pulling them somewhere else. It's not like they don't say, well, I hate all doctors. I am a doctor, but I hate all doctors. No, they just don't want to be one anymore. And they want to do something else. One of the coolest, interesting thing, so we Barb, Michaela, and I had this family come to do private sessions with us recently, and the whole family's medical doctors, right? And so we're sitting in the conference room in my house, and they're asking us questions about reptilians and consciousness, and I'm sitting there and I'm listening. I'm thinking, are these medical doctors asking me these questions? I mean, they're all practicing medical doctors, right? And so this is how you know the world is changing. There are people who, they make a lot of money. They're highly successful and respected in mainstream society, yet they can be sitting in our space and be talking to us about reptilians and consciousness and those kinds of things. So the world is changing. I can assure you of that. Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll be back here next month. I don't know when, but we'll put it on our schedule on Meetup. So if you are not on meetup.com, join our group, and then you'll be kept up to date of other events we have coming up. So we look forward to seeing you next month, and have a good month ahead.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.